Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. So today we're doing something a little bit different. We are going to bridge two completely different worlds that, surprisingly, share one massive monumental goal. On one hand, we've got this deeply personal, incredibly intimate literary story set in Nigeria. And on the other hand, we're looking at sweeping, macro-level data that is literally driving European education policy right now. I know it sounds like a massive leap, but stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to see exactly how closely intertwined these two narratives actually are.
Just think about this for a second. What on earth connects a 14-year-old Nigerian girl fighting for basic literacy with Europe's multi-billion-euro push for artificial intelligence? Seriously, think about that contrast. We are looking at two wildly different scales in the fight for education. One is a battle fought right in the home, just for the basic right to read. The other, well, that's being fought in parliaments and massive server rooms, trying to harness cutting-edge tech for millions of people. But when you strip all of that away, at their core, both of these battles are fundamentally about empowerment.
Okay, so to really understand this connection, we need to define the thematic anchor for our explainer today. In Abi Daré's absolutely incredible novel, The Girl with the Louding Voice, the main character, Adunni, is desperately searching for what she calls a louding voice. So what is that? Well, it's the power to speak out, to advocate for yourself, and to actually control your own destiny through education and self-expression. Adunni's mother drilled this into her, that education is literally the only way to achieve this. It's the ultimate tool for human agency. And you know what? That truth is a constant, whether you're sitting in a rural village or a high-tech European classroom.
But Adunni's quest? It is met with just a staggering amount of adversity. First, you have her rural reality. After her mother passes away, Adunni is forced by her father to marry an older man named Morufu just to settle his debts. She essentially becomes his third wife, trapped in this oppressive domestic servitude. And then, following a tragedy there, she manages to flee to Lagos. But her urban reality just brings a whole new kind of exploitation. She becomes an unpaid maid for a wealthy, powerful businesswoman known as Big Madam. It is such a stark, vivid illustration of extreme wealth disparity and the systemic forces that constantly try to silence young women.
Yet, somehow, despite all of these horrific circumstances, Adunni survives. And she does it through this incredibly resilient spirit. Like, take this quote, "Make something shine like a mirror." When Big Madam gives her this cleaning instruction, Adunni takes it completely, 100% literally. And it results in this overzealous cleaning spree and just absolute comedic chaos in the house. The author brilliantly uses Adunni's innocent literalisms and witty observations as a survival mechanism. By finding the humor in the sheer absurdity of the adult world around her, Adunni kind of softens the crushing emotional weight of her trauma. It really shows us that joy and imagination, they can persist even in the absolute darkest environments. But look, spirit and humor alone, they aren't enough to change an entire system, right? That takes human connection. Enter Miss Tia. She's a privileged, educated neighbor who steps in and becomes Adunni's mentor. And Miss Tia helps Adunni bridge these massive class lines. She helps her improve her English, she gives her guidance, and ultimately she helps Adunni secure a scholarship. Miss Tia's friendship is this beautiful representation of solidarity and empathy, and honestly, it proves a major point. To truly unlock a student's potential, to give them their louding voice, having a dedicated human mentor is absolutely crucial.
So we've seen Adunni's micro-level, deeply personal struggle. But right here is where our story gets much, much bigger. The million-dollar question is, how do we scale this kind of empowerment? How do we build massive, resilient systems that guarantee every single student out there, regardless of their background, gets their own louding voice? To answer that, we have to shift gears and look at the macro-level challenge that is currently unfolding all across Europe. Let's ground ourselves in the European context for a second. Get this. As of 2022, a super robust 42% of young Europeans aged 25 to 34 hold a tertiary degree. That is a massive achievement. I mean, it's nearly double the global average. But there's a catch. The data also reveals that deep socioeconomic and digital inequalities are still very much a reality. For instance, in some European regions, about 1 in 5 15-year-olds are underachieving in basic reading and math, and that's heavily influenced by their social backgrounds. So yes, the system has a really broad reach, but the actual outcomes, they aren't always equitable.
And then the system got hit with the ultimate stress test. We all remember the spring of 2020. Over 100 million European students suddenly had to shift to remote learning platforms because of the pandemic. Just try to wrap your head around the sheer scale of that number. 100 million students logging on to Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, you name it, practically overnight. This emergency totally exposed the existing digital divides.
Suddenly, students without reliable internet or proper devices were at severe, immediate risk of falling way behind. But Europe's response quickly evolved from just putting out fires into a really concrete strategy. Pre-2020, the focus was basically just on basic ICT infrastructure. Then, boom, the 2020 pandemic forced that massive remote shift. But coming out of that, it triggered the launch of the Digital Education Action Plan from 2021 to 2027. They transitioned from pure crisis management to a deliberate long-term policy framework. And looking even further ahead, they've set the European education area targets for 2030. The ultimate goal? Highly equitable, digitally mature educational ecosystems.
Now, to really grasp Europe's strategy, it kind of helps to zoom out and look globally. While East Asia is focusing heavily on top test scores in STEM, and Sub-Saharan Africa, which, remember, is where our protagonist, Adunni, is from, is working really hard on building foundational infrastructure, Europe's defining focus is all about near-universal access and equity. European policymakers have realized something critical. Before they can fully, seamlessly integrate advanced artificial intelligence into classrooms, they absolutely must build a robust, inclusive system first, one that doesn't just leave marginalized students in the dust.
Which naturally brings us to the double-edged sword of artificial intelligence in education. The opportunities here are staggering. AI can provide personalized, adaptive learning paths. It's essentially like having a dedicated digital tutor for students who need that extra push. Plus, it can automate all that tedious admin work so teachers have more time to, well, actually teach. But then there's the flip side. Regulators are actively wrestling with implementation hurdles right now. The EU is super focused on maintaining data privacy under GDPR, mitigating algorithmic bias that could totally skew educational outcomes, and preventing schools from getting overwhelmed by too many disjointed tech tools.
And here is where we hit the absolute most critical bottleneck in this whole plan. There's a startling statistic from OECD data that cuts right to the core of this. Only 39% of EU teachers felt well prepared to use tech effectively in their teaching. Think about that. That means 61% felt underprepared. We can build all the AI infrastructure in the world, spend billions of euros, but if the educators actually standing in the classroom aren't trained and confident in using it, the technology simply won't translate to better student outcomes. It's a huge roadblock.
So what's the crucial takeaway here? Technology must serve pedagogy. It cannot supplant it. And this brings us right back to our core literary theme. Think about Adunni for a second. She didn't find her louting voice just because someone handed her a book or a tablet. She found it because Ms. Tia sat down with her, guided her, and mentored her. European policy is actually reflecting this exact same truth. The literature on this is incredibly convergent. Educational technology, no matter how shiny or advanced, absolutely cannot succeed without the human element guiding it.
To back up that human element, European member states are actively rolling out some massive national reforms right now to close these gaps. Austria and the Netherlands, they've instituted large-scale device distribution programs. Spain and Portugal are heavily expanding their broadband access to make sure rural schools aren't left behind. Meanwhile, France and Germany are pouring funding into continuous teacher training. And Greece and Poland are busy modernizing their vocational education and training systems. It is literally a continent-wide effort to level the playing field.
So, what exactly is the roadmap for a successful, human-centered digital education ecosystem? Well, the policy documents lay out 4 really concrete steps. Step 1, close the digital divides. Hardware and internet access simply must be universal. Step 2, invest heavily, and I mean heavily, in continuous teacher training. Step 3, align all educational tech with the EU AI Act to ensure data privacy is protected. And finally, Step 4, foster lifelong learning. Because let's face it, in an aging population dealing with rapid technological change, it's not just the youth who need a voice. The adult workforce needs continuous reskilling too.
All right, I want to leave you with this one final, provocative thought. As we rush to build these massive digital systems, how can we ensure that technology actually amplifies our humanity rather than just replacing it? Whether we are talking about a young girl in Nigeria fighting every day for her right to read, or policymakers sitting in Brussels trying to implement AI across an entire continent, the ultimate goal has to remain exactly the same. The technology, the policy, and all that funding must serve one single purpose: to give every single learner, everywhere in the world, their own louting voice. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep asking the big questions.